We've been talking about AI's impact on the workforce for a while now, and I feel like everything I'm hearing is just kind of anecdotal. Obviously, there are fewer junior roles and more senior roles and just a pile of resume crap that we're all going through, clearly, but we haven't seen real numbers to prove it. That is, until now. Harvard just commissioned a study to figure this out, and it's very, very good. I took the time to comb through it and read some of the responses to it, and what we have to learn from this is actually really cool. I first saw this on LinkedIn, and the diagram says it all. The amount of junior roles available is clearly going down, while the number of senior roles available is clearly steadily going up. This isn't just a few companies either. This is across 250,000 firms that they have been actively researching to figure out what the impact is here. So what's going on? What can we learn from it? Where is the industry going? And most importantly, how can we actually get a job and make sure we become senior enough to not be unemployed in the future? These are all really good questions. They're going to take a little bit to answer. And if I can't get a job, someone's got to pay me. So quick word from today's sponsor, and then we'll dive in. I love my current stack. It's made life way easier for almost everything I'm trying to build. The combination of things like Next.js and Convex just lets you ship really fast. But I find I still hit the same two roadblocks in almost every project I try to actually ship to production: authentication and payments. I don't know how these problems are as annoying as they are, but I'm so thankful today's sponsors actually found a way to solve both at once. Yes, Clerk did it. I am so hyped that billing is now part of Clerk. It makes so much sense. Subscriptions should be tied to a user. They shouldn't be part of your application database. The same way I don't think your users table makes much sense in your AppDB either. And having this split up this way has just made things so much easier to set up. I know Clerk well enough to know they'll be okay with me plugging in an alternative. Here is my Stripe recommendations doc where I break down everything I've experienced fighting Stripe constantly with T3 chat. And as you see, it's a bit of a long document, and honestly, I need to update it because we've been hitting many more issues with T3 chat. I've been slowly going mad. So you can do that. You can work with people like me to figure out how to get Stripe working just right, or you can click a button in Clerk. Like, let's be real here. The experience with Clerk is so good. You set up plans in the dashboard, and now users can just check out. All of the UI already built for you, all of the integrations already built for you, no webhooks, no managing event queues, none of the chaos that you normally have to deal with. And if users need to be able to unsubscribe and make changes to their stuff, thankfully, Clerk's already built components for all of this, not just the payment side, but the user auth side. They have components for signing up and signing in, obviously, but they also have the little button in the corner with your pro pick with the menu that, it's so annoying to build these things yourself. I've had to do it recently. It was not fun at all. Every time I don't use Clerk, I end up regretting it some amount, especially now that we have all of the billing stuff and you're trying to make your app production ready and you're tired of dealing with all this stuff like I am. Look no further than Clerk. Try them out now at soydev.link/Clerk. Quick overview of this study before we go too deep. This is a study on seniority-based technological change, comparing junior and senior workers across different types of job roles, by the way. This isn't just for developers. This is across various types of employment. I wanted to make sure that the numbers I had were good, so I went and found another study that has even more information, and what I found from this is even more concerning. Here is headcount over time by age group for software developers, normalized. This is data they're getting from ADP, the employer payment system for doing payroll for your employees. They've got abstracted anonymized data that just has the job role, the age of the employee, and the amount of money they make. And what you'll see here is that early career, so between 22 and 25, has been consistently going down. Meanwhile, 26 to 30, slightly down, but still relatively even. But 31 up, all of these groups are continuing to grow as part of the workforce. This is terrifying. And it very clearly starts right as AI proliferation was becoming a bigger deal. It's a very clear trend here. And if you wonder why the numbers are so low here, that's all COVID surviving. During the COVID era, a lot less hiring was happening and we slowly recovered from that. But then once we hit the AI boom, only the more senior roles and mid-career people were seeing that level of growth. Everyone else has been seeing less and less. These are some more fun numbers. These are firms with their first AI posting, so their first roles that mention AI in the job descriptions. And the number of roles that have it mentioned, number of companies that mention it is consistently going up. Left is the first time they do it. Right is ones that have done it at all, cumulative. So you can see it's pretty consistent growth there. And here's where we see those differences in senior versus junior role availability and hiring. This sudden acceleration might have shifted firms' expectations about future automation, prompting them to adjust in a forward-looking manner by reducing junior roles that they anticipated would be automated in the near future. Such preemptive adjustments could be optimal for firms if they view slower hiring as less costly than future layoffs. Yeah. One other thing of note in terms of cost, and this comes up in here, people seem to think that this is going to be like companies just trying to save money. It's not. Labor market adjustments are visible in employment more than in compensation. So the amount of money people are making isn't changing the same way. In fact, for seniors, it's actually going up quite a bit. But for more beginner roles, there's less roles. The change is in who is being employed and what levels they're employed at, not in how much money is being paid to people. So I want to be very clear. What's going on here is not any of the following. This isn't companies hating juniors. This isn't senior devs pulling the ladder up behind them. And it certainly isn't companies trying to pay people less money. Surely all of these things are things that have happened at times for reasons, but if you act as though this is why everything is going differently and why juniors are struggling to get a job, you're too busy raging to pay attention to what's going on. And I want to make sure that anybody who is currently struggling to find a role is not getting into this like delusion hate train that's going to just distract you from doing anything real. Another thing, and I don't like touching on this because it makes everyone's brains fall out, this has nothing to do with immigration at all. If you legitimately think the reason you can't get a job in tech in the US right now is because of immigration, and you live in the US, just hit that X button in the tab. My channel's not for you. We're here to talk about how to actually get jobs and actually be involved in the environment here. Like, a couple thousand H-1B workers have nothing to do with the fact that companies aren't hiring straight out of colleges anymore. This is a different thing we're talking about. This is the real world. So go off and do your racism somewhere else. We have real work to talk about here. Anyways, what's actually happening here? We're going to go a slightly different angle. I have hired a lot of people. I have done over 500 interviews at my time at Twitch. I have built, destroyed, and watched many teams and organizations change across Twitch and AWS accordingly. I've been through it with hiring. I've seen it on every side. I've interviewed at dozens of companies. I've hired for dozens more. I've done a lot with hiring. So why would you hire a junior? There's a couple reasons. The first one, I'm sure plenty assume this is the main one. Juniors are cheaper than senior engineers. Why would you spend all this money on a senior engineer when you can get a junior? We'll get into that in a minute. There's a bigger one that's similar, though. They're more available. There just aren't as many senior engineers on the market because to become a senior engineer, you have to have a job. That's how you level up into the role of senior. So there's a much better chance if you're a senior engineer that you have a job than if you're a junior engineer or if you're fresh out of college. As such, there's a lot more juniors available on the market, which is why it makes sense to hire them if you're struggling to find more senior people. I know for a fact there is a real big struggle to find senior engineers right now. That's why we see all this crazy poaching culture where people are getting bought out and like hired off companies, or companies are being acquired entirely to find good, capable engineers, because there are not enough senior engineers for the amount of roles that are currently available. That's just a fact. There used to be not enough engineers, period, for the amount of roles available. We had a culture where a company like Google would hire a bunch of great engineers and give them nothing to do just to make sure their competition couldn't have those same engineers. We are way outside of that world now, but it's a culture that's still deeply ingrained some amount. I know I and many others were sold this dream of go to school for CS, get a job at Google, and live a happy life with the coolest workplace in the world. You even get free lunch and dinner. That's not what we're here to talk about. That was a promise we were sold that no longer exists. So what's the other reason to hire a junior? We're making a bet. Most junior engineers will eventually be pretty good. Some junior engineers will eventually be really good. Some of them will get there really fast, but a lot won't. A lot of junior engineers will slowly get good enough at one piece of tech and just kind of stay there. I've seen a lot of my own peers from college get into this, where they just like kind of learned Rails in college because that's what they saw people were using. Didn't like it, didn't hate it, didn't build any side projects. They just kind of used it for their courses. And now they just kind of use it, maintaining an old code base, making 65, 70K a year, no chance of a promotion, no chance of a new role. They're just kind of sitting there and they're fine with it. That's not a bet a lot of companies want to make. Meanwhile, if you're interviewing somebody from like my community,
there's a good chance they're slightly more driven than average. Like if you're watching videos about tech and you don't even have a job in tech yet, if you're trying to keep up with the industry, what cool technologies exist, what frameworks people like me are using, if you care enough to like be in the weeds like that, there's a real meaningful chance you're going to be really good eventually. And if you can detect this in interviews, you should potentially hire for that because you're investing in the likelihood this person becomes really good. To be very real with you guys, if I was to take a junior eng and a senior eng and give them both a workplace with no external like influence, like I'm not mentoring either of these people, I'm just putting them on a project and telling them to do it. The junior would get about 25% of the work done. It would take them way longer, I'll say 3x plus longer, and they'd make $100K a year. This is just very general numbers from my own experience. Senior would be like 100%, so standard speeds, 1x, 240K a year. So if I wanted to keep up with one senior with juniors, I'd end up with 4 of them. Now I'm paying 4 people $100K a year each, and benefits and everything else. The liability of every individual employee is kind of nuts. Or I could pay one person $240K a year. No one's actually hiring juniors to save money unless they're not doing actual fucking work. And to be clear, this side is still worse than this side for many reasons. You will need a senior to manage this group. The real reason that companies are hiring junior devs isn't so they can lead shit themselves. It's in hopes of helping a senior do a better job of breaking their work up in a meaningful way. These are the actual reasons that you're hiring juniors: to multiply the force of your seniors, to train up new seniors, and to find incredible talent in a world with too little. It's hard to find great engineers, and you're kind of making a bet when you invest in a junior engineer that they can be trained, that they will be productive, that they won't slow down your seniors too much to justify their hiring, and that long-term the company will benefit greatly from it. I was too junior to be hired when I was hired at Twitch, which is why I got a contract, not a full-time offer. In that first year, I had to grind a lot. For the first few months, I struggled immensely. My manager sat down and gave me better work. Didn't really mentor in the traditional sense where he like handed me through like line by line in the code, but just threw shit at me. It was like, here's how I did it. Go figure it out. And I would. And I learned really fast in constant fear of losing my job. And I didn't. I succeeded. I made it in. And then I like to think I had a pretty positive impact on Twitch. I just hung out at TwitchCon and had a lot of engineers tell me that they're still working on things that I helped get started. Yeah. So with all of this said, what is the role of AI? Because I still need more senior engineers. We still really want to train these people up. We're still hunting for this incredible talent. Why wouldn't we still hire juniors? Well, I personally would if we were hiring right now, but we're not. I do have one intern who's finishing up high school right now who just kicks so much ass we had to bring him on. But honestly, he's more senior than half the senior engineers I've talked to, despite being 18. Yeah, I wrote him quite the college letter of reference because Yash is going to rule the world someday. That aside, why would this stuff go away? The harsh reality is there's a certain type of brain rot that exists in most fields, especially employment in these fields. More engineers equals more output. The Mythical Man Month was a required reading when I was in college, and I would argue it should be a required reading for most software developers. It's a book on software development that observes a pattern where more men does not make more software. As you add more people onto a project, the speed the project iterates actually goes down, not up. I just realized there's dark mode on Wikipedia now. That's cool. This book was written by Frederick P. Brooks when he was working on OS 360 at IBM. He added more programmers to a project that was behind, thinking that he would be able to get it back on track, and that was not the case. It actually got slowed down even further. There are certain tasks that just take a certain amount of time, and more engineers do not magically make it faster. Sometimes they'll even make it slower. Can you produce a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant? Yep. This is the way this works. More engineers does not actually equal more output. There's a lot of reasons for this. The biggest one by far is coordination. It's hard to coordinate a bunch of different people, especially people you haven't worked with before, especially if those people work in different ways. In my video about all the chaos of acquisitions that OpenAI has been doing, I talk about this a little bit and why it makes sense for a company like OpenAI to do an acquisition of a small team. Getting a team of people that already know how to work together is so valuable because the hardest thing of management is understanding how different people work and trying to coordinate it all so they can properly work together.
And also making sure you're not rude to anyone at any point. They're not rude to each other. They're not causing more problems than they're solving. The orchestration of people is by far the hardest part of large software projects. And if you're a junior engineer that's in college right now watching this or just got out and is trying to find their job, you do not know how hard you are to work with. Not just because you haven't had the job, because you don't have the experience to know what good to work with is. It's hard to do. It's a thing you learn over time, how to be a good coworker, how to actually get shit done at your job. And no one's going to have that fresh out of college. As such, when I would manage juniors, I would have to find for all of them what's their way of working and learning, how much of this is just ingrained in them and won't change, how much of this can I shift towards a more ideal collaborator, a person to work with on my team. How can we make this work together? How can I solve the puzzle pieces and grab some scissors and trim some edges to make everything fit together? This is not easy work. I know that tech managers and PMs and all of this get a lot of crap, but their work is not very well respected. It's not easy to run a giant team of people and make all of this happen in real work environments. It just kind of sucks to do. There's a very good chance if you're managing junior engineers for the first time, you're going to hurt someone's feelings, you're going to make someone real upset, you're going to cause a project to be way slower, you're going to make someone work too many hours accidentally, you're going to do a lot of things that suck. That's just the nature of management, the nature of learning, the nature of all of these things. Do you know where none of the things I just said apply? Claude. Claude doesn't give a fuck if you're rude to it. Claude doesn't give a fuck if you make it work 100 hours in a week. Claude doesn't care about who else it's working with and how you treat them differently and the difference in salary of like $5,000 a year between people. I cannot tell you how many fucking great engineers I have had to talk out of leaving behind an incredible role with an incredible team for a questionable role with a team they don't actually like for a $5,000 a year difference. I'm sorry, a 5% bump in your salary is not worth upending your fucking life for. And this shit, it just, ugh. These are the things you deal with when you're talking to these early engineers. And it sucks because none of this is making your company better. Trying to explain to one of my junior engineers why they shouldn't be so upset about a 3 to 5% difference in salary when they could just be growing their career 3 to 5x. Trying to explain to somebody why they have to get their tickets in time and why they do actually have to go update Jira, otherwise I can't track their work. All of these things aren't the core role that I have, which is to deliver software as an engineer, engineering manager at the company I'm working at. This shit just gets in the way. Claude doesn't care. This is the catch. If you take two good managers, not great, good managers, you give one a team of 4 juniors, and they have to teach these juniors how to work in the environment, or you give a good manager 4 instances of Claude code, it's going to be much quicker for the person with 4 Claude codes to get productive and ship really fast than somebody who has 4 junior engineers that's a good enough manager. If you're comparing great managers, the person with 4 people will quickly do very well. It'll take some amount of time. Like they'll be unproductive for a month or so. But then once everything's aligned and they figure it all out, assuming the juniors are good as well, they can get moving really fast. And you'll be pretty hard capped at the ceiling with the guy with Claude code. But here's the harsh reality. Most managers aren't great. Most managers aren't even good. Most managers are pretty bad. If you take 4 junior engineers and multiply them by 1 bad manager, you get 0. You get jack shit. If you take a bad manager and you give them 4 instances of Claude code, they'll at least be productive. Like they won't be good, but they'll be productive some amount. And when you're making your processes for your companies, especially these big companies, you got to plan for the bottom because there will always be a bottom. We break this down to great, good, and bad. If a great engineer using Claude code is 80% as effective as a great engineer with a real team, a good engineer is going to be 120% as effective with Claude code as they would be with a good team. And a bad manager is going to be 200% plus more effective with Claude code than with 4 junior engineers. And when you see this on a spectrum of good to bad, optimizing for the bad managers makes a lot of sense. And it sucks that this is reality, but it is. But there's a scarier reality too. Where did the great people come from? How do we get these great engineers and these great managers in the first place? What leads to these people getting good enough that they can run a team well, they can get them really productive, and they can get them shipping and growing and into these more valuable roles? What makes an engineer good enough to lead a team of people to greatness themselves? I'll give you a hint. It requires that they have a job and learn from somebody else who's already done it. Okay, yeah, that's the answer. You need to work with people who have already done it. It is really hard to get better when you can't see what better is. When you're surrounded engineers with various skill levels, it's hard to even know what your skill level is. One of my favorite sayings that's haunted me my whole life is that if you're the smartest person in the room, you should leave the room. You don't get smarter by surrounding yourself with dumber people. You do get smarter by surrounding yourself with hard challenges and smart people to pace yourself with as you figure it all out. It's actually one of the reasons I love college. Not because everybody in college is way smarter than you, but the fact that you could pace yourself alongside these people helps you level up a ton, and it gives you the motivation to keep pushing. And if you have even smarter people around you, maybe some peers who are smarter, maybe a friend who's already employed, maybe a senior when you're a junior, that when you become a senior goes and gets a real job and tells you all about it, maybe some people you meet at a hackathon, maybe one of your professors is actually good, God forbid, any of these things, that's what makes you grow. It's really hard to do this in isolation. And this is the point that I am most scared of. I wish I could sit here and tell all of the juniors, all you have to do is go make a project on GitHub or contribute to some random open source project and everyone will see how smart you are and you can get a job. It never quite worked that way, but now more than ever, it absolutely does not work that way. You need to be near people who are smarter that you can learn from and grow from. And that's really hard to find right now. That's what these numbers are showing that's so scary. These 22 to 25-year-olds are the people who should be surrounded by smarter 35 to 40-year-olds and can learn from them and grow and improve their skills. That's how I got better. Once I got hooked to getting better, my role in this place changed a ton, where it was less me going to just learn from them and more me going to share the things I love that I learned about, that I was inspired to go learn about because of them. I was the guy who was always into the new shit and would come to the office excited to talk about Svelte 1.0. I was called the Svelte guy at work, even though I've never ever shipped a project with Svelte, just because I thought what Rich was doing was really interesting. And I would talk with much smarter people about it and learn different ways of thinking about it. And I'm scared that's going to go away. And I don't know what we replace it with. As you level up in your career, it gets harder and harder to find rooms where you're not the smartest person, or at least the most senior person. Even for me, now that I'm like 30 and in SF, I often find myself in a room full of 20-somethings that are grinding hard, doing awesome stuff. They are smarter than me in many different ways, but I am often the most senior engineer in the room now. And that's weird. My whole career, as far as I can remember, my thing is that I was the guy who was too junior to be there but could somehow keep up. That's over for me. But I'm also only 12-ish years into my career. I know 12 years is a ton of time, but the fact that I'm struggling to find rooms, find workplaces, find places I can go and contribute where I'm not the most senior person, it's a little bit scary. And I'm so lucky to be in the position I'm in, where I have incredible people, my literal idols from my childhood when I was learning to code. People like Ryan Carniato, Fred Schott, Tanner Lindsley, a bunch of the core React team people that hang out all the time. People like Naman, who was just in chat earlier. So many of these people who I am so lucky to even know the names of, much less be able to call my friends. It's awesome I have those people so I can continue to be the dumb one in the room. But it's hard to find that. And if you're not as fortunate as I am to have these connections with incredible people, because for some reason people watch your YouTube channel, by the way, if you don't mind, hit that sub button. Costs you nothing. It's free. The red button underneath. Less than half of y'all are subscribed. Come on, guys. I've heard that people who subscribe to my channel are actually 2x more likely to get a job. I don't know. Just a thing I've heard. Regardless, I'm lucky to have that, and that's my angle to meet these awesome people. But if I didn't have the job or the channel or all the connections in the VC, Y Combinator, Silicon Valley world, it would be really, really hard for me to find these types of people and to keep learning and growing. If I was me 10 years ago, fresh out of college, I don't know what I would do. I had my friends in college, my open source friends, and I learned from them a bit. But it's not the same as every single day going to an office and being in meetings, being in a line of desks with people that are better than you, that you can learn from and grow and go out of your way to try and meet the bar of. And I don't know how we replace this. At the very least, we need college programs to get a lot better, because right now, like we've just accepted the fact that college programs for learning how to code are shit. Like that's just been the norm for so long now that we don't think twice about it. Like obviously someone comes out of college and doesn't know how to use Git. What? That's so insane to me. And I've seen people coping and arguing like, yeah, Git is a new technology. It might change. No, just be fucking realistic. College programs should teach you how to work in a real environment and learn from smarter people. And the worst part is when you are one of the smart people, if you learn to code before college, You're going to spend the entirety of your college experience being the most senior person in the room. It's relatively easy for someone who learned to code in high school to show up to college and understand code better than most of their professors. I've seen this so many times. It's painful. And then once you finish college, having been smarter than all your professors, basically doing jack shit for 4 years, all the things they were supposed to teach you in college, you already knew or just didn't care. You come out at the end, you don't have any peers that are at your level. You don't have any projects that are built by you and a bunch of other smart people. You just come out having kind of wasted 3 to 4 years. What do you do now? How do you explain to a company that you're a real engineer and the other 600 people in your class aren't? Hackathons seem to be a cool-ish thing for this, for sure. But the really important thing is to make friendships and connections so that you can get good people. In the end, hiring always comes down to the same one thing: trust. You are constantly exchanging trust for money in the process of hiring. If I have the option of a somewhat senior engineer that worked for 2 years at some company like Shopify or Netflix or something, or somebody that hasn't had a traditional job yet, but I worked with on a hackathon project, or I saw contributing to an open source thing that I care about, one of these people is much easier to trust than the other. Someone's career history is a useful metric for how trustworthy they are and how capable they might be. But somebody who you've worked with in the past that you know can contribute and be useful, that's a much easier person to trust. And previously, we were willing to take bets on low trust individuals, like people fresh out of college, because if that went well, we'd have a great engineer. And if it didn't, we filled the seat, got some work done, and can just fire them and get the next person. But the reason we dealt with that is the need for engineers was so high. Now the need isn't just going down, it's often a counter signal in many places. If a good manager is slightly more productive with Claude than they are with a team, and a bad engineer is much more productive with Claude than with a team, the incentive to take the risk is going down. Without taking the risk, we never see the other end. We don't get people who we made a bet on that had a 20 to 40% chance of becoming a great engineer and maybe even a great manager someday. If we're not betting on these people, we won't see those success stories in the future. And there's a world where the next Theo just never happens, or just does YouTube and nothing else and never actually gets good. I can't imagine if I started the YouTube channel before having my 10 plus years of industry experience, how this would all come off. It'd probably be much worse and much more terrible advice. Sure, people meme all the time, Theo's a soy boy JS dev that just so happens to have scaled services to hundreds of millions of users. That's a side thing. We don't pay attention to that part. We're too focused on him liking and defending JavaScript sometimes. Really, though, I'm one of the few more senior engineers doing this type of content. And if there are fewer senior engineers, there are going to be much fewer people like me doing this type of content, especially because the value I can provide to a company is going up every day. There's a future where a company offers me so much money that I effectively have to stop doing YouTube because it's irresponsible to do both. And all of a sudden, this resource goes away. Will it be filled? Maybe. I like to hope that markets work in such a way that this channel can make enough money to be an alternative to writing code for somebody who knows enough about both. But there wasn't really much before me, and I'm scared as shit there won't be much after. I'm not saying there aren't other great channels that you can learn a bunch from, but the balance of real experience, practical advice, decent production, thank you, FaZe, for carrying my ass, and just caring way too fucking much, that combo just isn't very common. And if we reduce any of those numbers, especially if we reduce the number of engineers that have the opportunity to level up and grow and get good, the likelihood of more people doing content like this, the likelihood of good managers hiring people, the likelihood of good mentors that would pick someone like me, make the bet, and help me find my success, it's all going down. That's terrifying to me. I try to end on a good note with these, and it's harder than usual, but I'm going to lean into this trust thing a bit more. Because in a world where everyone's just peddling AI slop, the need for more trust is higher than ever. There is such a vacuum of trust right now in the industry. Our programs are no longer deterministic because we have LLMs generating random shit all over them. The fact that we're shipping actual production services with like 85% reliability is absurd to me. As such, being real, transparent, reliable, and accessible is more valuable than ever. The thing you need right now is a friend, not a job. Although a job would be nice, and I wish we could all get them if we deserved them. It's harder to do without having connections, without having people who trust you, without having connections, without having a network of people who are in this world already. If you're the best programmer you know, you're fucked right now. You're absolutely screwed. You should be friends with people who are smarter than you. You should surround yourself with people who are more competent and capable than you. You should be a chaotic lunatic like Barrel of Lube on Twitter. I'm not saying you should make a Twitter. If you do, you should do it like he does, where it's impossible to ignore the shit. But you should find people who know more than you, who are excited about the same things you are, because they might be lonelier than you think. You would be amazed how many smart engineers there are that just don't have anyone to talk about this shit with. That's why this whole channel was made in the first place. I made this channel because I wanted to nerd out about deep tech stuff that I couldn't anymore because COVID took away my lunch and dinner conversations. When I couldn't force my coworkers to listen to me rant about Svelte, I needed to do it to somebody. And I picked my friend in chat, Jacob Evans. He had a Twitter space called Code and Life that he would do every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday night. And I would go there and just take over the space with my 50 Twitter followers and rant about whatever I was interested in at the time. One of those things was the T3 stack, and people didn't understand it. So I went live on Twitch to showcase the T3 stack and decided, why not? And I went and uploaded it on YouTube. That went way better than I ever could have expected, and here we all are. It's kind of nuts. I miss the OG Twitter space era so much. That was a great way to make connections and network. But in the end, this all just comes down to being fucking useful, being interesting, being in the space, being a name that can be recognized, and being trustworthy. You'd be amazed at how many connections I've helped make and how many job roles I've helped fill because I saw the right person reply to something on Twitter. And I'm not saying Twitter is this end-all be-all method for getting a job. It's actually one of the worst ones. GitHub issues are great, though. If you're on GitHub and you're using open source projects and you see something that you use, like, I don't know, Next.js, and you have a problem with it, and you find an issue where the problem's described that hasn't been updated for a few months or a few years, drop a link for a repo that makes it easier for them to reproduce it and possibly fix it. Just drop a, hey, I tested on 16.0.1. It's still broken. Here's a small reproduction I made on Code Sandbox or StackBlitz that makes it really easy to see the problem. Those little things, if I see your username popping up in valuable places where you're clearly actually working and finding real problems in the real world, I trust you a hell of a lot more than some overly credentialed fucker that's giving me a crazy AI-generated resume. The reality of trust is that you're not going to get it from your fucking resume. You're not going to get it from cold applying to shit. You're not going to get it from a bunch of random GitHub repos. You get trust by doing real shit with real people. I've seen so many engineers that only talk about the people side when they're complaining and not when they're growing. You can't skill up your way into a job anymore. You barely could before. You can't resume boost your way into a job when you're in a pile of 10,000 AI-generated resumes. You can't just apply to a listing that gets hundreds of applications a second and expect anything to happen when they have one role to fill, especially if they end up giving it to a senior person anyways. You need to level up by locking in and finding real people that want to do it too. If you are the smartest dev you know, you probably can't get a job right now. And that's terrifying. Not just for the industry, but for you independently. You shouldn't be the best dev you know. You need to go out of your way to surround yourself with smarter people and be interesting and useful to them. And that's not as hard as it sounds. If you find these people, you're probably finding them in spaces you're already in because you're interested. Lean into that. There are so many people that I love for my community that I found because they drop useful resources in my chat or because they reply with funny things on Twitter or they send me links to stuff that become videos. There are people who I know exclusively because they started contributing heavily to Create T3 app and now I've helped them get jobs and now they're running companies themselves. Find people you understand that you align with, do the things that you care about that you think they care about too, and then once you're deep in the space, ask them for advice for finding a job. One of my favorite quotes, I think I got this from Michael Seibel, but I've heard it so many times now, it's for many places. This is about investing, to be clear. If you're looking for money, ask for advice. And if you're looking for advice, ask for money. This is the rule for investing. If I want to raise money, I should ask rich people for advice on how to raise. If I'm trying to get advice, I should ask them, hey, can you give me some money? This is kind of how it works in this world too. I'm not saying you should come to me asking for a job so you get advice. I'll just fucking block your ass. Don't stop coming to me asking for a fucking job. If your conclusion from this video is that you should DM me your life essay about why you should be hired, you're entirely unemployable and that's your fault. You should fix it. And you shouldn't do it in my fucking DMs. But if you're trying to get a job, you should ask the smartest people you know in the space, the most employed, senior, capable engineers that you're friends with. Once you've established a friendship with them, hey man, It's kind of hard to get a job nowadays. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how someone like me could get their first role. And if you see that person is hiring, don't ask for the job role. Don't ask for a referral. Don't ask for anything other than advice. If you see someone like me that you respect and have had good conversations with, and you've had multiple DMs back and forth, and you see them put up a job listing, don't ask for it. Ask them for advice on how to get a job. You'll be way more likely to pull it off. There is nothing that smart people like more than feeling smart. That's why they do it. That's the whole reason. So if you give them the opportunity to feel smart by giving you advice, they get more excited about the conversation. They have a more positive memory of you. They have more reason to want to talk to you and respond to you, especially if you reply with things like, oh, that's really good. I hadn't thought of it that way. That's such a thoughtful way of putting it. Thank you. That pattern plays really well and results in people thinking of you more. And even if they don't have a role open, you bet your ass the next time they do, they're thinking about people who would be a good fit. What they're thinking about is people they know are capable in the space they're already in that make them feel good. You can hit all three by asking them how to get a job. I wish I had more advice here, I'll be honest. The industry's in a weird spot, and the fact that we're seeing this shrinkage of junior roles is terrifying. A very good point from CJE, who's been dropping really good points throughout. The caveat here is it's really easy to smell when someone's trying to game this. I am scared that by giving this advice here at all, I'm almost setting myself up for failure. Like, the people who benefit from this, for the most part, already knew to do this. And I'm scared if I give this advice that a lot of people who wouldn't have figured this out, that would have just sent me the life essay in DMs that I get dozens of a day, that person is now going to be more annoying because now they can disguise themselves as a good intended person. It's similar to the open source contribution thing I just did a video on. Like, if it looks like a duck and it smells like a duck and it acts like a duck, it might be an imposter. Be careful. I'm really scared of that. That's actually a really good point on the senior thing. Like, the reason I'm so scared about channels like mine not existing is that there is no real reward system for senior plus people to share their knowledge. Like, there is no benefit for me making a blog post that even a handful of people read. Most of the time, no one will. But even if they did, I barely get jack shit for it. Why would I? I already have a job. Ugh, there are so many layers to why this gets bad. If all the educational materials by people who don't know what they're doing yet, then the next generation gets dumber and dumber. We're possibly living in idiocracy right now, and that terrifies me. So, yeah, my advice is surround yourself with smart people, be useful, be interesting, be good in good faith, and do your best to be better than you were yesterday. I wish I had better advice than make friends and subscribe to my channel, but those are the two things I've seen help. Maybe give them a shot. Wish I had more to say here, but this is the reality. The industry's changing, and it's changing most for juniors. Don't listen to random senior engineers saying everyone's fine, there is no change, because they're not being affected. You're being affected, and that sucks. I'm going to do everything I can to help y'all out, and I hope you guys take the opportunity to make yourselves better long term. I do hope this one was helpful. It's a bit of a chaotic one. Let me know what y'all think. Until next time, peace, nerds.